Okay, yeah, all right, and let's check out this video from Tectone reacting to somebody else. Is Zenless Zone Zero a complete failure? Let's see what he's cracking.
It was already looking terrible. You know what's not looking terrible? Pressing the like button and subscribing right now.
True, you know, go check out Tectone's content. You probably have if you're watching this video. But, you know, drop a like on my video as well.
What does Kazahana have to say about this? Is there any way to indicate what revenue they already have? I'm actually not sure. I thought it was all.
I'd heard that they'd made like $25 million within the first few days, but I've had no information that that's been confirmed. I don't know if that's been released by Huyo or that's just kind of assumptions. I'm not too sure, but it's been widely reported on some websites, which I think is pretty insane. Actually, I didn't think the game would do that much that quick. If I'm honest, I thought this was probably going to be a slow burner for Huyo, but 50 million plus downloads is insane.
Already on the same track as Wuthering Waves, but we'll see.
Zero has been out for just over 2 days now, and it's been a kind of funny ride. So Zenless Zone Zero.
Okay, we'll restart. Erase time.
And it's been a kind.
And what the Tectone just said there as well, he's already on the level of Wuthering Waves. That's not surprising though, is it? Like, Huyo is the behemoth in this space, so whenever they drop something, you know there's going to be a lot of people playing it and then paying it as well. It's just going to happen, isn't it?
Kind of funny ride, I'll be honest. If you've seen some of my previous videos, you've probably seen me talk about the Chinese review on Zenless Zone Zero and how it wasn't accepted that greatly. And I definitely thought...
I think that's been a general consensus across the world. This game has split the community down the middle in the gacha scene and in the content creator scene, and especially in the Huyo scene. I think content creators were a lot easier on this game than a lot of the general audience was, if I'm honest. I've seen a lot of creators who've been quite warm towards the game. I think most people kind of had the same initial response to it, that it wasn't a great starting when you first started playing. I think everybody thought it's too easy, it's too simple, it's a little bit of unga bunga. And then as people continue to play it, it's like, it's not so much that, and people seem to have come around a lot more, which is interesting, but still people are quite divided on it. I see a lot of people just absolutely hating on the game, which I think it's a decent game, but I totally understand why some people don't like the game though.
Over in NA and EU, that would be a lot different, but it seems like a lot of the players are sharing the same sentiment, with also a lot of creators being kind of mixed on their feelings on Zenless Zone Zero, and also mixed on their feelings whenever they compare it to other gacha games. Now,
I think, again, I think content creators have been a lot more positive than the general community, in my opinion.
The creator experience that I'm seeing is a lot of creators started the game and were talking about how bad it was, and
Agreed.
then a lot of them have changed their mind. And I'm not going to...
Just as I was saying, this is what I've seen. I went through this myself, actually. I genuinely went through this experience myself emotionally. I always found the game fun at the start, but I was a lot more negative to a lot more of the mechanics of the game, the combat, the TV system right at the start. I then came to enjoy the combat system when you find there's a little bit more nuance to it, when you start to do a little bit more difficult content. And I've also come to enjoy the TV system as well. I just don't like the way the TV system's applied in the story of the game, but it's actually a decent mechanic if you ask me.
Call them hypocrites. I don't think changing your mind is hypocrites.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I think if people are not allowed to change their mind, that's just ridiculous. People do have that attitude though. I've seen it a lot with Hex Juice, and I think because Hex didn't really like the game when she first started playing, and was kind of called out a little bit by Tectone, and now she enjoys the game, and everybody's kind of said, well, it's just because Tectone called you out on it, which I don't think is a fair assumption really, because a lot of the stuff that she said about the game, the negatives, were definitely fair points to make. And again, I had the same feelings myself, how the game kind of brought me around massively. I found the game fun at the start anyway, but it brought me around massively. And I think most people have kind of gone on that journey as well.
I think a hypocrite, for its proper definition, is usually a person in the process of change. But I know a lot of people have come around to Zenless Zone Zero. My expectations are not really being impressed at all. My opinion is still around the same. I would still give it a 6.5 out of 10. But a lot of people who hated this game now like it. However, that might...
I'd agree with that. I'd say it's about a 6, in my opinion. It's
also be because...
It's not a bad game. It's not a great game. It's just a decent game. It's a very fun game, and it's got beautiful animations and great characters and all that sort of stuff. But it's just a decent game, which, in my opinion, a 6 out of 10 is a decent review. It's above average. If you're going to look at 5 is average. I think a lot of people, if it's below an 8, it's a bad game. although I don't review games, but in my personal scales, when I see people doing a 10 scale, 5 is average. It's bang in the middle. Anything above that, it's pretty decent.
Because this game was met with such intense hatred, and a lot of streamers' opinions are heavily influenced by their chat, which is very normal. And I think a lot of the hate watch
Agree with that. I definitely think that as a streamer, if the watchers, the viewers are not enjoying the game and they voice that, I think it definitely alters your experience of the game, because obviously just playing a game on your own is definitely different to streaming a game. And I think when there's a lot of more negative emotions and viewpoints being expressed to you quite a lot while you're streaming, even as a small streamer, you know, it does kind of, I think it maybe jades your view of a game, and it kind of adds a little bit of a bias, and then you start to see more of the negatives as well. It's hard to pull yourself out of that, I think. Or I kind of think majority of the community who dislike the game and who now like the game went on the same journey. I think even the people who really like Zenless Zone Zero can see why people had issues with the game initially. And then there's some people who are just like, dude, I only installed the game after an hour, which is totally fair.
Watchers, rather than bitching in chats, have now just completely left. And now I think, due to the absence of people screaming, shitting, and crying in their chat, I feel like they're more open to liking the game. Because I'll be real, it was very hard to like the game when people would go live and just get screamed with, the game's fucking terrible! And you can think the game's fucking terrible. That's absolutely fine, but I'm just saying the way that affects streamers' mentality.
I definitely agree with that. But I also think it's just part of the process with this game. I think, people have come round because the game kind of does that to you, if you ask me.
Either the YouTube comments are affecting their Twitch. And by the way, once again, appreciate you guys. Let's keep on going to the video. This has been a very heated topic in Zenless Zone Zero. And once again, you have to acknowledge, I could have...
As I said, I've said this multiple times, this game has really divided the gacha community and the Hoyo community and just gamers in general. And people have been really vocal about it as well.
100% been all aboard the gravy train and said Zenless Zone Zero's garbage. And I know some of y'all might not agree, but I do try to keep it very fair. But everybody's entitled to not liking the game. But it does make me happy that people aren't stuck in their ways. And even though they said one thing, they're okay with being open to the game getting better. Not that I give a fuck about Zenless Zone Zero, but I think we've matured a lot as a community, because a lot of people pick one stance and then never fucking change. But when
people do get tied to the bias sometimes, especially if they've made public statements as well. You see that not even just with streamers, just with people in general. Once they've made that public statement, they've got to stick to it now. They've said this, and it's like, you know, I've made this point now and I can't back off it because that somehow means I'm wrong in the point that I made. You can have valid opinions and on something that makes you dislike it initially, and those opinions can still be valid, and then you can turn to like a game. Those opinions can still be there. You might change your viewpoint, but, you know, you can like something and still have criticisms of it, and I think a lot of people that do that, they make those criticisms, and there might be fair criticisms, there might be not, but then they get tied to them and they're like, well, I can't walk it back now.
new information is
Which
presented with
stupid.
new experience are presented, I think it's absolutely fine to pivot your stance. Absolutely. But before we continue, today's video is sponsored by Snowbreak Containment Zone. Have you ever dreamed of saving the world from a dystopian future? What about doing it while being a badass sci-fi waifu? Well, strap into this RPG third-person shooter and join the squad of heroines in Snowbreak Containment Zone. Customize your
Game has gone full on degen, and I love it. It's insane how degenerate this game's gone now.
team with unique characters, upgrade your futuristic
Dude,
firearms, and
the jiggle
blast
physics
through
in this game is
waves of
insane.
enemies in style. You can choose to do
One thing I said about this game as well, obviously this is just a total tangent, just talking about this. Obviously this game doesn't have the sort of polish that things like Zenless and Wuthering Waves and, you know, Star Rail have. But I'll give them credit. How the game initially launched, they have really tried, not just in the degenerate stuff, but in terms of like level design and events and this new open world area they've added to the game. They're really trying to change the direction and throw in as much things as they can to try and please people. They're giving a lot of fan service, which sometimes isn't necessarily, obviously it's good because, you know, it's, you know why it's good, but it's not always the best thing for the game because it's not actually making the game better itself. But yeah, man, they've been really trying. I'll give them that.
do it all alone or raid to the wasteland in co-op. Play Snowbreak Containment Zone today and save the future one waifu at a time. And
Do
why
it.
don't we play a little bit of a
Do it.
trailer to whet y'all's appetite? That's a big-ass woman.
さっさと片付けよう。今晩ランクマ更新する。
I actually I want a really good, really polished third-person shooter gacha game as well. Will Huyo be the one to really do that? Because yeah, I just think that the space is ripe for the picking.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Dude, you can definitely tell this was taken from a Twitch stream. I swear, some streams look so muddy sometimes, and that's on Twitch because of the bitrate cap, because it's insane how muddy streams can look sometimes.
Not come from that distance is crazy. 3,000! Damn, bro. Hey, I ain't gonna play it handheld. I'm gonna play that shit on PC, to be honest. Feel free to try it out on any platform you desire. And thank you, Snowbreak Containment Zone, for sponsoring today's video.
You see, these aren't arguments or
Shit,
anything.
it's
These are
Snowbreak.
just people, you know, explain their opinions and explain their opinions on the game. And I just want to say, personally, I don't mind Zenless Zero. It's fine, but I definitely don't think it's one of
I think that's a really fair view of the game. It is fine. It's a fine game, and that's not bad. Not every game has to be a 10 out of 10. It is a fine game. That's a perfect description of the game, in my opinion. The game, in my opinion.
the best games out there. There is definitely a lot they could improve on.
I agree. I think the game is fine.
But also, there is quite a lot they could improve in Wuthering Waves. But in this video,
For sure.
we're going to be talking about whether Zenless Zero has succeeded or failed in its
I think it has succeeded on every front. Let's just double check real quick. It obviously isn't the new big Hoyoverse game, but
I don't know if he's going to get into numbers here, because I'm curious, actually. I think it has succeeded, in my opinion. I think the only way, well, not the only way, but I think the major way that Zenless Zero failed was kind of showing the game and its nuance and the combat complexity, if that's the right word to use, because it's not exactly complex, but it's a lot more like a fighting game. There's a little bit, there's quite a lot hidden underneath that's not really shown, and that's fine at games. A lot of games are like that, but the game really starts you off in a way that kind of makes it really appear not like that, and the game almost teaches you to play it not like that, which is kind of a weird, it was like a weird way to bring you into the game. It just makes you kind of just play it brainlessly. And of course, that's definitely due to the difficulty early on, but not even just that, just the way the systems are kind of promoted to you at the start of the game as well, which is kind of weird. I think that's one of the major flaws in the game. Obviously, it's got other issues, but I definitely think that is a problem at the start of the game. I think that's why a lot of people were really turned off the game as well, among other issues. I know a lot of people just hate the TV system, but I definitely do think that was a big reason as well.
But nobody, at least anybody who knows anything about trends, the way the gacha sphere works, the people who are sound of mind weren't expecting it to be. It was always going to be the smallest gacha game that Hoyoverse has ever.
Agreed with that as well. Like I said, I've said this multiple times. For me, this game is literally there to keep people in the Hoyo sphere. It's to keep people in the universe, basically, in the Hoyo multiverse. It's so when you're done with the new update on Genshin and Star Rail, you come over to Zenless Zero to fill that little gap and the little cooldown, you know, the lull. And I do think we'll see another Hoyo game very soon. Well, not very, very soon, but, you know, in the near future, that's going to fill that other gap. Because I think if you play all 3 games now, every other week, you'll be getting an update. And if you play 4, you're going to get an update every week, and then there's going to be no reason to go play other gacha games, and then there's going to be that time investment and cash investment, and you know they're gonna have you buy the kahunas.
Released, but I'm actually curious, how small is it in comparison to today's date? Let's just check it real quick. Past 90 days, how's it doing? I'll admit, for right now, man, it's still keeping its head above water, but it is going down every single day. It was about.
That's normal though, isn't it? Really, with trends like that is so normal. But you know that's really good actually, in my opinion. For what it was always going to be, and how really with how the game's been received by some people, I think that seems like it's still doing really well.
About 70% of the success rate in Wuthering Waves, and it is still dropping off pretty hard. But for right now, it'll probably drop below Genshin in the next week. Yeah, it'll probably.
Damn man, that was Wuthering Waves. Jeez. I did not think that was, because like really now, even on Twitch now, nobody's really watching Wuthering Waves. Obviously, we're in a bit of a content lull again, and I think we spoke about this in the other video with the extended banners. I think that's going to be a bit of a problem going forward for Wuthering Waves. That's something that can change with updates, but that's interesting.
Probably go around to being a little bit lower than Honkai Star Rail and Wuthering Waves. But I'm also very proud of Wuthering Waves for doing as good as it's doing, for being the only off
True, it's not a Huyo game as well. That's one thing people need to remember that as well. I think a lot of people compare everything to Genshin and to Star Rail, and just most things are never going to get there if anything ever gets there. So to even just be a percentage of that, he's doing really well, really.
Brand gotcha game out there. That's not the Hoyo versus Monopoly, but yeah, I think it's doing fine.
First couple days of being a gacha game, and we're going to be looking at stuff like analytics and
great.
also the revenue. So before I get to this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy it, and also go over to GamerSubs and use my code Kazo where you can get a ton of cups, tubs, and even more.
I also fucking love GamerSubs. We also have our own code called Code Baldy. That's BALDY. But if you want to use code Kaza, you can. But if you also want to support me, code Baldy. 10% off GamerSubs. It's really good. I recommend the flavors Lean, Coke.
I don't have a code. I don't have a code.
These blowhole blasts. They're so fucking good.
In my last video, I actually released a new anime channel, so if you want to go subscribe to that, that will be down below as well.
Speaking of, I've just started watching One Piece because it's one of the big animes that I've never watched. I watched the Netflix show, kind of did it backwards. Actually just started watching the OG. Well, it is one of the OGs, isn't he? From, what was he when he started? 99. I'm only a few episodes in there, but I am enjoying it. I think when I was a kid, I think it was just the art style of One Piece that kind of made me not really want to watch it. And I don't know, I think the stretchy combat of Luffy just kind of made me think, it's just a bit, don't know if I like it, but I'm really enjoying it so far.
I just uploaded my first video. It's done pretty good, and yeah, I just have a fun time making those videos as well.
Oh yeah.
But let's get back into the video. So the first place we're going to be looking at is Google Trends. Now, obviously, Google Trends has been quite an important part whenever it comes to, you know, recognizing how well a gacha game is.
Bro, why you gotta do Tower of Fantasy that dirty, bro? It's crazy that you even put that.
Why even bring Terra Fantasy into the conversation? That is literally just to show how dead it is and make everything else like, you know, well, at least we're not down there.
That's not on the list. That's nuts.
And this
I feel bad for bro.
Now, as you can see here, Wuthering Waves is in blue, Zenless is in red, Genshin Impact in yellow, Honkai Star in green.
We already went over this.
Tower of Fantasy, just because, you know, this was one. Whereas
it does show though how massive Genshin continues to be. It had that huge spike, but the maintaining of relevance is ridiculous.
Already broke this down. We'll keep going.
Zenless Zero, he played it for a bit, and then he just started, you know, talking about how much he hated the game, which obviously isn't a very good look for Zenless Zero.
Once again, I really don't like when people have the mindset of because one creator doesn't like it, it means it's bad.
Facts. Even if a bunch of creators don't like it, people need to really try games for themselves and then come up with their own opinion. It's the same with movies, any sort of content you ingest. You should know this, and if you don't, then you learn. You know, it's sometimes a good barometer, and you can definitely respect some people's opinions, and you can align with some people's opinions, but you've got to try it out yourself. People are hating on Terra Fantasy. All I hear is just negative stuff about Terra Fantasy. I'm going to try it out, though. I am still going to play that game. I'm not expecting much, and maybe I'll enjoy it a little bit more because of that. But, you know, I've still got to try the game first before I decide how good or how bad or how mid the game actually is. But a lot of the content creators I watch roast Terra Fantasy. So, you know, you've got to get things to try yourself.
Bad. I feel like Zenless Zone Zero just attacked a niche. And once again, yeah, Asmon really didn't like Zenless Zone Zero, and that's okay. I'm like okay about Zenless. But the other thing is
I actually really quite like Zenless. I said, you know, it's a fine game, which it is. Well, subjectively about the game itself, from, you know, trying to look at it as a video game, it's a fine game. I can't really give it more than that. I'm not going to say it's like a 9, but I really genuinely have a lot of fun with Zenless Zone Zero, and I do really quite like the game a lot more than what I'm giving it a score, because I can see all the negatives with the game and the actual you know, mechanical side of things and just the game itself. But the game's a lot of fun to play. I have a lot of fun with it.
I'm bored. It's good to pass the time. There's not really anything else out there, and I've already beaten all the other games, right? So we'll go back on the update patch, but it's another game to add to the old content slop. But that being said, Asmon also did say he'd be open to playing it more in the future. But yeah, he's also, you know, he's also farming.
This also surprised me a ton, as Hoyoverse has like actually really tried with the advertising for Zenless Zone Zero. They brought out so many trailers,
advertised so much,
so many different things to.
Yeah, dude. In I think it's like places like Korea and Singapore and that. The advertisement is insane that Hoyo put out. Like subway, trains, absolutely plastered in all the characters, huge billboards on the side of skyscrapers, like big installations in city centers. It's absolutely wild. You just don't really see that sort of stuff in this part of the world, unless it's for things like like the Spider-Man game and things like God of War. They tend to get those sort of things like down in London. You see these big installations. Like I think there was one for Spider-Man in like New York and London. The big thing with the trucks, and had like the people in like cosplay dressed as the New York policeman standing around it and all that sort of stuff.
Advertised the game, but it still hasn't reached the heights of Wuthering Waves yet. And even going back to the creator thing, they actually like sponsored a ton of like creators that don't really play gacha games, but are still massive on.
I think for me personally, I think it seems to be doing it. People definitely seem to be speaking about it a lot more, but obviously Wuthering's been out a bit longer now and it's in a content lull. And I think it's just the thing to farm at the moment because there's a lot of division in what people think about the game as well. So yeah, that's probably a good reason why I'm seeing a lot more of that. And plus, I play the game. YouTube's going to recommend a lot of that stuff to me because I'm searching for it. So yeah,
Twitch and YouTube to play Zenless Zone Zero and give it that boost, but it just seems like that wasn't enough to save it. So would you have to wait and see in the next couple of days?
Yeah, man, I think that's a bit harsh. It wasn't enough to save it. Maybe. Obviously, this is an anecdotal thing, but I feel like the game seems like it's doing really well. Actually, it feels like that. Obviously, if the trends are saying something a little bit different, is definitely a factor. But I think it's going to be fine in the long run. I think it's going to be fine.
Days and over the week to see if Zenless Zone Zero will pick up again and will reach this peak which Wuthering Waves reached. But honestly, I just don't really see that happening. It's gone down, and
I think it potentially will, but I think once we get the next big update, and if they really do listen, obviously it's Hoyo, so we don't know. I think if maybe they remove a bit of the TV system from the story, not from the game, just from the way the story's told and use it as a storytelling vehicle, and add in some really interesting, intriguing endgame content, and really do a good job of showing the combat systems a little bit better, so that people actually think there's a little bit more to it, because there is, but the game really doesn't show that when you first start playing. And I think that's a major flaw in the game, and I think that's a lot of the reason why people are just not that interested, because they think it's just so, simple, linear, and just has no nuance either.
And I think it's going to keep getting lower and lower and lower, and who knows, maybe it'll be underneath Wuthering Waves, maybe it'll be above, maybe
it'll be below Honkai Star Rail and Wuthering Waves, but
okay. I don't know, I think this next update, 1.2, is a massive factor for Wuthering Waves. It depends on the new area, the new zone, how well that's done, how the story picks up, things like the voice acting, and just like stuff to do mid-update as well, and whether we start to get smaller kind of FOMO updates thrown into the larger, larger chunk of the update, because I think that's where Wuthering Waves is struggling a little bit for me at the moment.
For the people who enjoy it, I do think it's not going to end a service, right? But yeah, it will be the most casual playing of all games, which they did intend that they want people to leave and come back. But yeah, it will not be.
I'll say some of the devs did say that beforehand anyway, and I think that's exactly what I was going back to what I said before. It's designed to keep people in the space, in the sphere, in the Hoyo universe, the multiverse. You're off Genshin and you're off Star Rail, you come on to Zenless Zone Zero, and then you just go back to them. And I think they've designed the game to kind of work like that, really.
As good as Wuthering Waves or Honkai Star Rail. And it is a shame, because I do think Wuthering Waves is the best gacha game ever created.
I think I agree with that, actually. Well, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I love Wuthering Waves. I'm an Andy. I'm a Wuthering Waves Andy. The game is great.
But due to the fact that it doesn't have Hoyo versus marketing, it will also be around the same relevancy as Honkai Star
I agree with that as well.
Rail, even though I do believe it is better than Genshin Impact. But once again,
I wonder if it will. I don't know. Will it be around the same sort of relevancy? Well, I suppose, though, because looking at the graph there with Star Rail, it's quite low, actually, isn't it, really? Especially compared to Genshin. Genshin still absolutely crushes it, doesn't it? It continues to absolutely smash it.
That could just be my opinion. Well, that is my opinion, and that's most likely not the general public perception. But I do think if you were to get a player today and get them to play Genshin Impact and get them to play Wuthering Waves, I do think the majority would choose to stick around Wuthering Waves. However,
I think I agree with that as well. Obviously, if they actually came in totally blind, with no outside stimulus of the past, if they just got to play both games totally blind and played the first version of the game 1.0 of both games, I think I agree with that as well, yeah.
Marketing is marketing, and that's why Hershey's has dominated the chocolate space, even though, shout out to Mr. Beast, I do think Feastables is better.
It's got a little bit more like longevity.
Yeah.
neither hold a candle to Cadbury's, just saying.
So the game, although it didn't have an explosive start, will stay pretty good all around and stay on top. But who knows, really? It's really hard to tell. But so far, it is really not looking good for Zenless Zone Zero. Now, we've also got this article too.
Oh, that's cap. It's fine. It's fine. The game.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's not doing fine. It's probably not going to be at the levels of obviously Genshin and Star Rail. But even if, as I said before, if it does just a percentage of that and stays at that, it'll be doing fine. There's lots of other gacha games in the space that nobody hears about that are doing absolutely fine. They're killing it. It's got a lot smaller budget as well, I would imagine. So, you know, they're going to be absolutely fine. It's going to continue to print cash for Huyo. Yeah, the game will be fine.
Doesn't need to be as successful as the other 3 games. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Right? Tower of Fantasy is like 1/40th the success of Genshin Impact, and it's still fine. Plus, Zenless Zone Zero should be the cheapest to make out of all of them because it's not open world, it's instance world, and the majority of the overworld is just going into TVs, which is way less production cost. So it's completely fine. It really is. People need to understand just because the gacha is.
And I think if Huyo was smart, they won't expect it to be that, because that's where a lot of Western developers mess up, is they expect every game to be, they compare it to other games and they're like, right, we have got to hit these sort of numbers, and it's just not going to happen. Not every game is going to be that, and not every game has to be that, and consumers don't expect every game to be that sort of massive experience. You know, there's space for, that's why indie games do so well. There's space for different kinds of games, and again, as Tecton says, if it does even a small percent of that, it's going to be totally fine. It's going to make them a crap ton of money, and the game will continue to get reinvestment and content coming out as well.
In the top 10 gacha for revenue, it doesn't make it a failure. It all depends on what it does for the
I think Zenless will be in the top 10. I think it'll probably say that as well, personally.
company, which does promote Hoyo versus business model, which is creating a whole world of different games to absorb people into the Hoyo verse, as well as makes money far more. If you put in $5 and you get $1 million back, that's great. If you put in $5 and you get $20 back, that's still a success. You're getting more than what you're putting in. And as long as you're getting more than what you're putting in and that covers business cost, it is a success. But a lot of people think, oh, well, it's not making $1 million billion, so it's a failure. I'm not saying that's what he's saying. However,
Be hard to tell, but so far it is really not looking good for Zenless Zone Zero.
it is absolutely looking fine for Zenless Zone.
I agree with that as well. I think that's a little bit, you know, a little bit of an extreme viewpoint. Totally fair to say. Obviously, it's opinion. Yeah, I agree with that. It's going to be fine, man. It's going to be fine.
It is. I just want to make that very clear. It is. Like, mathematically, let me know how I'm wrong. But yeah, it's
Game
fine.
is still going to
We've
bring
also got
cash.
this article too from Game World Observer. I don't really know who they are, but it seems like they are some kind of gaming news.
Well, that's fair then. You know, I don't know where they are, but you know, they've probably got a fair. They've probably got a you know, it's probably facts. It's probably facts.
Site, and it says Zenless Zone Zero generates 3.7.
Not that just because you don't know a space or a website doesn't mean that, you know, they haven't got some good journalism to give you.
$1 million
I don't know why I struggled with that sentence so much. It sounded so bad as well.
on mobile
Right, carry on.
launch in 24 hours. How it compares to launches of Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. Obviously, this is an extremely useful article to let
See, I wouldn't imagine. Well, I suppose from a investor standpoint, that will be something that they do compare. But I don't think the Hoyoverse are going to compare that so much. This is the thing that we're going to do, is compare it to Genshin and compare it to Star Rail. It's mental to compare it to Genshin because of the COVID buff. Insane buff. Absolutely insane. Ridiculous DPS. Star Rail as well was the second game in that Hoyo mega world, you know, so that was always going to do really well as well. You know, we're a little bit further on now. Things have changed in the world. There's a lot more gacha games out there. There's so many more that are doing, you know, actually decent revenue, and there are good experiences as well. So there's a lot more competition now. So it was never going to be the same as those. So it's kind of crazy to try and compare them, really. But you know, it's a fair thing to do, I guess.
let us know how well Wuthering Waves is doing, and you can see
I believe that's very similar to the money that Wuthering Waves made, but I'm not sure.
it's done $3.69 million, which is just amazing. It says China was the #1 country by revenue, accounting for 57.6% of the total, which was to be expected as Hoyoverse is a massive game in China. And then the top 5 regions also include Japan.
This is why all these this big drama over the racism thing in the West is just never going to matter to Hoyo. They don't care. they're gonna please the Chinese fan base because it's a Chinese company, and you know China's China, and you know what I mean. In how they look at things, in that sort of stuff. And at the end of the day, if over half of the revenue comes from that region, that's going to be the most important region to them. That's why I'm hopeful for Wuthering Waves as well, at least listening to some of the stuff that comes from the West, because it seems like it's a little bit more spread out. That might change, you know, that definitely might change. But it just seems that Kuro definitely listen to the global audience a little bit more as well, which is great for us as well, if you're a fan of the game.
With 19.7%, the US with 11%, Hong Kong with 2.5%, and Taiwan.
Dude, I was actually surprised when I keep seeing the numbers of how big gacha games are in Japan, and I know that mobile games are a lot bigger, because you know, like the Wii is bigger in, or the Switch, sorry, is bigger in Japan, and mobile gaming is a lot bigger in Japan. The consoles don't seem to be so big, and I think PC as well. But I was really surprised by how much Japan spends on gacha games as well. It was actually, I genuinely thought for the most part the US would be second.
One with 1.8%. So again, the game has gone global like Hoyoverse likes to do with a lot of their games. I mean, it's pretty big in the US too. 11% is still a lot. The same with Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan. But what's quite surprising here is that Zenless Zone Zero had over 47.5 million pre-registers, which is pretty new. But this tells us that only 5.9 million people have downloaded
that was insane
it on
to me.
iOS or Android. Now, you could make the point that maybe a ton of people downloaded it on PC, but again, it's still really, really low compared to the amount of pre-registration.
I thought the advertisers 50 million plus downloads though. So was the other 45 on PlayStation and PC then?
No, so I think it's because generally the Hoyoverse is very young and very fickle, and they probably bought into the hype and just downloaded it just because it was Hoyoverse, but they realized they didn't give a fuck, right? And like, fuck it, don't care. Also, nice ass.
So maybe people just got bored.
Dude, the police officer's ass is so insane.
Or people just
Dude, it is. That's a new character that's coming out soon. Yeah, insane.
weren't interested after they pre-registered. Or maybe there is the potential that Hoyoverse may have botted a lot of their pre-registration numbers to make
Possible. I don't think that though. I don't know, maybe, but I don't think that's true.
it look like the game was actually hyped. But hey,
I mean, that's very much a reality for sure, but there's no confirmation and we'll never be able to prove that.
Okay. I suppose it, you know, I'm like, well, why would they do that? But then again, you know, it makes the game look like it's a bigger thing. It's hype. Other people do get pulled into that. Same thing with streams. People get attracted to big streams. The more people that are chatting, people just get pulled in anyway. So yeah, you know, it's a fair assumption. But I'd probably I'm tending to lean that I think that most of those are genuine downloads just because of how big Hoyo is.
But I think speculation is fine.
we'll never know how much less downloads we got
True.
after that many pre-registrations. It says that the US leads in installs with 879,000, almost 15% of the total, followed by China with 13%, which is kind of insane to be honest. It means that a lot of people in the US have Zenless Zone Zero installed, and that it's actually much bigger over in the West. But the fact is that China is spending more money on the game because that's what the overall Chinese do. There is a lot of whales in that community.
Of course.
And it's
Yeah, spending culture between Western and Eastern cultures is so fucking different.
That's the way games have been going for a while though in China, hasn't it? Because of, I think, with the laws away that, you know, the amount of time that people can spend gaming and the way the games are designed all around that, games for a long time have kind of been designed to, you know, pay to progress, pay to win, all that sort of stuff. It's just culturally seen as something that's fine. So it's going to make sense that that's going to transition into games like gacha games, which have a predatory system, that they're going to likely be willing to spend more money at the start and then get drawn into that cycle of FOMO anyway. So yeah, it makes sense.
Western fucking hates pay to win. Eastern is like, oh, thank God, I can play.
Exactly. You know, you've only got to look at the first Descendant, how crazy people get. Free-to-play games got microtransactions. What the, you know? Like, well, of course. And I think I'm a lot easier on that stuff. For me, as long as it doesn't mean something's taken out of the game and then put back in after a purchase is made and it makes the game slower, more boring, and it just makes it worse, I genuinely don't mind. As long as the game's fun, I'll happily spend a little bit of cash in a game. If I can get more than 20 hours in a game, I genuinely don't mind putting a little bit of cash into the game because I see that as a good return on money, really. And if you've got 100 hours out of a game, I think it's totally fair to drop a bit of cash into it. You don't have to, of course, if you don't want to. And obviously, if the systems are designed to force it, then that sucks. But, you know, if it's just for fun little extra things that make the game more enjoyable or you a little bit more powerful, and that's totally fine in my opinion, because 100 hours for, let's say, if you put 40 quid into a game, that's a good return on your time, in my opinion.
Less so I can work more, fucking awesome. But I think that's because traditions are much more strict over in the East, and business minding and being career focused is a lot more promoted. So people are looking for any
Yeah.
chance to game, and if they can spend a couple dollars to stay relevant in their favorite games, I think that's fine.
Seems like
I don't think if it's just a business idea. I think it's just a culture of, being promoted to people to be more productive in their life in general, to not be sitting in front of a computer just absolutely melting every day and molding at stuff that really doesn't matter. They want people to go out and touch grass as well.
Though a lot of people in the US are downloading the game, they're probably spending a lot less money on it. But again, that's also pretty good for Zenless Zone Zero just being a very global game. And then finally, we have the comparison between the
As I say, the way that Zenless is built as well, I think it'll start to really pull Chinese players in even more over time, because it doesn't take much time to get you what you want out of it, and I think more people will get drawn into that and they'll start spending more. Like I say, it's going to be fine on the money, but I think it's going to actually be better than fine. I think it's going to do really well, I do, especially in China.
Hoyoverse games, with Zenless Zone Zero actually coming out on top of both of these games. Genshin Impact only making 1.1 million and Honkai Star only making 1.1 million as well. Whereas Zenless Zone Zero, as we said, made 3.6 million, which is
I don't know if that's real.
And it's kind of surprising to see, especially after looking at that Google
We'll
Trends
see.
thing. You'd expect there to be a lot more money coming in for Genshin Impact.
I don't know about all that.
Much bigger release, but I think a lot of people have gotten used to Hoyoverse now, and Hoyoverse has been around for a while, so people are spending more money on the game because, they've done a lot of good advertising, and I think that's mainly what it is. A lot of the advertising for the characters, it's much more prevalent.
People have been groomed into it though as well. Like if you are a gacha player and you've been playing gacha games for a few years, you're just a lot more likely to spend money right off the bat. Whereas when you initially got into the space, you test it out, you kind of get a feel for what the game's all about, the mechanics, the systems, all that sort of stuff. You start to learn things, and then you're like, all right, okay, maybe I spend a bit of money now to get what I want. You know exactly what you're going to get. You know the systems, whether the names are changed and they've got a new slap of paint, and you're going to be a lot more willing to spend money right off the bat, aren't you?
So people are spending to pull a character on the banner, compared to Genshin Impact and Honkai Star, which maybe didn't have as much, and so that means people spent less. Obviously, this is only the first 24 hours, so this might go down, and the Genshin Impact and Honkai Star revenue might have went up. And yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see how it does long term. Yeah, overall, it's not looking great for Zenless Zone Zero in terms of popularity.
Again, I've just got to disagree with that. I think it'll do absolutely fine. Maybe popularity won't be, obviously, it's not going to be as big as Genshin and probably not as big as Star Rail. That's just a fact. They're just behemoths. And maybe it won't even be as big as Wuthering Waves. I think that'll probably be where it's more comparable. I think it'll probably be as big in revenue, maybe even bigger, just because it's a Hoyo game. And I think on updates, it probably will be bigger on Twitch and all that sort of stuff. I genuinely do. I guess time will tell. I think Wuthering Waves has kind of dropped off quite a lot on Twitch, whereas Genshin continuously holds people, which Wuthering Waves isn't so much. But only time will tell, I guess. These are a lot of assumptions that we're coming up with that we can't really know until, once 6 months has passed on both Zenless and Wuthering Waves, you can look back then and be like, okay, all right, there's a real trend here, or there isn't.
In terms of revenue, they're doing pretty good at the moment. I'll give them.
Yeah, that seems good if that's true. I do think it is going to be fine to judge their revenue at the end of July, and I think they'll for sure be in the top 5 of gacha games. I know Dokkan Battle's having a crazy event, but I don't think it's going to set any records whatsoever. And I do think the revenue is going to fall off tremendously because the 1.1 units look fucking terrible, and I'm also pretty sure they might be giving.
I don't even know what the 1.1 units actually look like, actually.
One of those for free, but I'm not entirely sure on that. But the next upcoming banner just look really fucking mid.
Than that, over 3 million is actually insane. I just can't wait to see what's going to happen in the future. Yeah, just let me know down in the comments whether you think Zenless Zone Zero is going to succeed over time, or do you think it's going to crash down and, maybe be at the level of Tower Fantasy, which...
Nah, I just don't think that's going to happen. Hey, I might be proven wrong. I just do not think that's going to happen in any form. Relevancy in terms of searches on the internet, streams, content, you name it. And I definitely don't think it's going to be in that space in terms of revenue. I think it's going to be easily top 10 every single month, potentially top 5 at least for a while. Obviously, when updates happen and new banners, and if they're really good, it's going to peak back up. But I think it's going to do absolutely fine. And, who knows what the future holds with things that they implement into the game. If it does have a really good start, maybe we'll see some massive explosion in terms of what we're getting, and it might start to trend on the upwards.
has been very, very, very low in the search terms recently. That's about all
Dude, I swear, everybody loves to freaking roast Tower Fantasy. It's like say, I've got to try the game, man, because it just gets shit on in pretty much every gacha video we watch when people are talking about success and failure. It seems to be the poster girl of failure, in the sense that I think most people expected a lot more out of it. And I think it was just handled badly from what I get from a lot of people, really, more than anything.
It'll always be more relevant than Tower of Fantasy, because Tower of Fantasy has the curse of being a fucking MMO and a gacha, which is just so fucking niche. And like MMOs always fucking die off on mobile devices, bro. True. Like, that being said, there's so many.
For the most part, most MMOs die off anyway, you know. You've got World of Warcraft, you got Final Fantasy, obviously you got a bunch of others that have done well over the years, but most MMOs, they'll have a decent launch, decent amount of players, and then within a month or two, they have fell off hard. It's a niche space anyway. MMOs are, but yeah, most just really do fail hard, to be fair.
A fuck ton of money, but yeah, I don't think there's been a
hard
single
to make
successful,
as well.
Truly overwhelmingly successful anime MMORPG in a very long time. At least anything that broke the WoW or Final Fantasy 14 barrier. But yeah, it just MMOs on fucking mobile games or mobile phones just fucking suck. Like, I don't want to.
Dude, my opinion, most games that are trying to be anything like Wuthering Waves or Genshin or an MMO anyway, I think they suck on mobile, personally. I see so many people showing off supposedly amazing phones with look how great this look, and I'm like, you know what? When I was a kid, I'd looked at that and it blew my mind. I suppose for kids it's a lot better, but I'm still like, just dude, that looks ass to me. Ass. It looks terrible, and it's on a tiny screen, and it's just like, yeah, not feeling that.
Have my partners just lose
Runs
because
like
their
shit.
internet service just fucking falls out. Fuck that. That being said, Tower Fantasy still is keeping their head above water and making a lot of money, so it is still fine.
Play off this video.
It's obviously done well enough for them to decide to invest money into a new game in Neverness to Everness, which looks amazing, by the way. So it's done well enough that it's allowed that particular company with its devs to actually do something else, or it's been seen as decent enough to attract more investment to allow them to make something else. So, you know, I'd argue that that's a success in a way.
As I said, if you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And also go over to GamerSubs and use my code Kaza. As I said, it's down in the link below.
Dude, good plug.
10%
Code Baldy.
Cups, tubs, and so much more. Yeah.
Again,
good plug.
I don't have a code.
Next one. That's all.
Great video. I fucking love this dude's channel. Makes very, very, very good videos. Go support Kazehana. Great video, good insight. Always very fun to talk about the success or the lack of success for gacha games. But yeah, good fucking video. Like the video, boys. See you on the next one. Peace.
Yeah, it was a good video. Definitely some good information. I think I've just got to disagree with that. I don't think it's been a flop at all, personally. I think it's been very divisive in terms of what people think of the game, that's for sure. It's not going to be as big as Genshin. It's not going to be as big as Star Rail. I don't think it was ever designed to be or expected to be as big as those two. If it ever did, I think they would just be incredibly happy about that. I think the cost of the game is infinitely smaller than those two, and the revenue was expected to be infinitely smaller as well. I still think it's going to be absolutely massive in terms of the revenue it's going to bring in for them, and the return on investment as well might be brilliant for them, because it's going to be cheaper for them to continue to update and actually originally make as well. And like I say, again, I think it'll genuinely sit in the top 10 easily, potentially in the top 5 for a while. And, you know, obviously when updates happen, it's going to have spikes of relevancy and spikes of cash flow as well. I think it's going to be totally fine. You know, not everything has to be on those levels at the end of the day. It's like in like the shooter space and everything expecting, oh, if we don't get to Call of Duty levels, then it's a failure. And it's like, well, you're going to fail every time then, because you're rarely, if ever, going to get to those sort of levels, are you? You know, it's just not going to happen until that game drops off to the point where it's a lot smaller and then something else can be the new hot shit, you know? It's like Fortnite. You know, really, after that, there's never really going to be a Battle Royale beyond Warzone, really, that is going to get up there, and trying to base your success or failure on those numbers is just going to mean you're always going to see an absolute failure. Yeah, great video. So yeah, we did a little bit of reaction to a reaction there, but I'll definitely have to check out. I think I might have subscribed to I think I might have actually subscribed to Kazahana. Yeah. So we're already subscribed to Kazahana. So yeah, great video, great original video. I'll link them all in the description. Check them out. And yeah, is Zenless Zero a complete failure? No, I don't think it's going to be either.